everyone and welcome back to my channel. As you've probably guessed, I am doing another kind of mystery solved, not solved case. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel to keep updated on any future videos. I just want to warn you guys, obviously as you probably have seen by the length of this video, it's going to be an in-depth long video about the case of Jessica, and the reason it is so long is because I want to make sure I do this justice and that I actually included all the correct information in this and tried not to leave anything out. Obviously guys, if I have left anything out, feel free to correct me in the comments below, but please remember that obviously the information that I've gathered is only the information that I have access to, which is public. I first heard of this case on Cold Case Files on Netflix. When I heard of this case, I was shocked to say the least. It is honestly the most infuriating thing that I have watched. Finally, before we get right into all the nitty gritty about this case and what actually happened, I just want to put a trigger warning out there. I will be talking about torture, rape and murder, and also kidnap. Obviously if any of you guys are affected by that type of thing, please be cautious before viewing this video. Jessica Dawn Dishon was born on the 2nd of May 1982, and the day that she went missing she was 17 years old, and she was living in Shepherdsville, Bullitt County, sorry if I pronounce these incorrect guys, in Kentucky in the USA. She was living with her mother, her father and her 2 younger brothers. The day that Jessica went missing was the 10th of September 1999, and she actually went missing right outside her own home. The events that I'm now about to describe, I really feel that this case could have been solved a lot sooner. So Shepherdsville, where Jessica lived, was a very close-knit community. Everyone knew everyone. It was mainly just built on families and generations passing on their property to one another. So everyone that lived in Shepherdsville knew everyone, they knew each other's families, everyone was very close. So on the day that Jessica went missing, it was around 5:30 a.m. when Jessica's mother, Edna, woke up to get ready for work. Her father, Mike, then met Edna near the front door like they usually do. He gave her a kiss and said goodbye to her, and then he went and got the 2 boys up for school. Once he had got Chris and Bubby up for school, he thought he would just check in on Jessica, and before obviously everyone left, he said that he saw Jessica in bed but she was fast asleep, so he just left her to get herself up whilst he got the boys sorted, let them get on the school bus, and then off he went to work too. Unfortunately, this would be the last time that any of Jessica's close family would ever see her alive. And things like this really do get to me, because I just think it is any other day. You don't think to wake your daughter up to think that that's going to be the last time that you see her, and you don't think to give some people a kiss or a cuddle before you think you're going to go see them again. And I think this is the thing about these cases, is you just never know what is actually around the corner. So Jessica's normal routine would mean that she would normally get up around 6:30 in the morning, and then that would mean that that would be normally around that time that Jessica would be heading to her car to get in and go to school. However, around 1:30 that same day in the evening, Edna arrives home from work, and to her surprise, she still sees Jessica's car sitting there on the drive, which she finds a little bit strange. But to back up, the theory, maybe something else was going on, she just gave Mike a little call. So she gave Mike a call asking whether he had given Jessica a lift to school or not, But he said no, basically last time he saw her, she was asleep in bed. So obviously this started to confuse Edna. She was like, well, she's nowhere to be seen. At this point, she had literally checked the whole house, called for her and everything. She was nowhere to be seen. So what happened next really turns my stomach, because it's giving me chills now just thinking about how Edna would have felt seeing what she saw in the car. So as she looks in the car, she noticed in the driver's side seat, one of Jessica's shoes is left in the footwell. She also sees her purse or bag, whatever you guys want to call it, sitting on the seat too, and right next to this bag was her mobile phone. Now, what was seen on Jessica's mobile phone was the numbers 9-1. Obviously, this scared the living daylights out of Edna. She told Mike to get home right there. She knew something wasn't right. Obviously, the parents automatically thought that Jessica was in trouble, because they assumed that the number she was trying to call was 911. Just to make sure that they wanted to know that they weren't overreacting, they called the school, and this is when the school said that Jessica had not turned up to any of her classes and she'd not actually been to school all day. This is when the parents instantly knew that something really wasn't right. It wasn't normal for Jessica to leave all her personal belongings, especially in the way they were left. I mean, one shoe, what's that about? And also the fact that she didn't even turn up to school or tell anyone just really made them question what was actually happening. So obviously after this, they went straight to the sheriff's department and reported Jessica as missing. They told them everything that they had seen at the house, and what did the sheriff's department say? Come back tomorrow if she's still not turned up. Apparently they found none of what Dishon was saying was weird or out of character. They believed that one shoe and a girl's handbag and a phone with 9-1 left in it apparently is not enough to prove that your daughter may have been a victim of foul play. They then basically tried to say that she might have been a runaway, and Mike turned around and said, a runaway with one shoe on. Good point, Mike. But still, they turned them away and told them to come back tomorrow morning if she still hadn't turned up. So it was September the 11th, 1999, and obviously, as you can imagine, Edna and Mike had barely any sleep. They waited until basically the sheriff's department opened again as soon as they could get in to go and report their daughter missing again. So after reporting this again to the sheriff's department, Mike was extremely upset with what happened next. He saw a police car coming. One police car coming down the drive. There was only 2 police officers. There didn't seem to be any urgency for his young daughter under these weird suspicious circumstances at all. They went into Jessica's car without gloves, without any forensic testing at all, and basically ruined the crime scene. They touched everything in the car with their bare hands. And in this documentary, Mike says about how he was extremely upset about this, how they basically just ruined what could have potentially be a crime scene. After this, literally, the police said that is really it, we'll see what we can do, and they left. So on September the 12th, 1999, Mike is seen on TV making an appeal for his daughter, and he basically said that the sheriff's department is doing bugger all. This is the bit that really annoyed me in the documentary that I watched on Netflix. It really just angered me. I understand everyone has to have their own views, their own sides and their own opinion. However, when someone's daughter has been missing for basically 2 whole days, and they've had to report it twice because this person's husband basically was short-staffed and his officers did not believe the Dishons in the first place, to make the comments that this woman made on this documentary really upset me. This woman is called, sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Tita Parsley. And basically she was the sheriff's wife, or is the sheriff's wife, and she basically went onto this documentary and slated the Dishons for, saying that her husband wasn't doing enough. Now, when you watch this documentary, you'll understand what I mean. Her demeanour about the whole thing, the way she said it, but then she comes out and she says, but if that was my kid, I would want them to do as much as, they could for me too. However, Paul Parsley on this documentary does get very tearful, and he did apologise for everything that had happened. However, it's still negligent what happened, because if it wasn't for this 2 to 3 day period, Jessica could have potentially been saved. So in these 2 days that Jessica was missing, the police literally did not do anything. They didn't even bother to search. They literally didn't bother to search. And this is because they were short-staffed. And so what had to happen was the family of the Dishons went out and started to search the nearby fields and forests and everything like that, just in case they did come across Jessica's body. This next bit instantly caught my attention on the documentary, and instantly I had a gut feeling about this man, but we'll get onto that later on in the story. So Mike's brother Stanley was obviously helping during these searches, and for some reason, I don't know why this came up in conversation, but basically Mike and Stanley started talking about where would someone dump a body, and he instantly said, if I was going to kill someone and I was going to dump their body, I would dump them in the river bottoms. So the river bottoms is been described as kind of this murky, really not nice place to be, and it really put people on edge being there. It was really doom and gloom, something really out of a horror film. So whilst they go on Stanley's hunch, they start to search and they start walking through the river bottoms, and halfway through this search, Stanley throws up everywhere and he says how ill he's feeling. So they all send Stanley home, and actually the search kind of fizzled out from that point on. After this search kind of fizzled out, everyone kind of goes home, and Chris, who is Jessica's younger brother, goes to feed the dogs outside, and he ends up running back into the house saying, I just heard Jessica scream, help me. Again, this bit, when you know what the aftermath is of this case, it really sends questions through my mind. What the hell could have been going on? And we'll go into that a bit later. Mike grabs his gun, and he does say on this documentary he was ready to kill. Just as they run outside, Stanley is parked on their drive, or he's pulled up on their driveway, and he basically just asked Mike what is going on, and he just said, Chris just told me that he heard Jessica scream help. And at this point, Stanley's like, well, come on then, what are you waiting for, kind of thing. Let's go search. They end up going and looking up into the wooded area, and lo and behold, who do they see here? They see a man burning clothes in like a tin bin. So the person who was burning these clothes is called Bucky Brooks. He was the Dishon's neighbour, and at this point in time, the Dishons and Brooks did not have a good relationship. He was actually reported to be kind of like stalking or like harassing the family. He constantly was calling them, breathing heavily down the phone, and just really weird shit like that. As they approach Bucky, he screams at them, "Don't kill me," over and over, which again, suspicious. Then obviously Mike and Stanley and Chris all start saying, let us search your property. If you've got nothing to hide, let us search your property. But Bucky absolutely refuses. So after this, the police were called, because obviously a man burning clothes in the woods after a 17-year-old has gone missing 2 days ago is a bit suspicious, let's be honest. This literally is like nearly a whole 3 days later. They then ask what Jessica was wearing that day. So like To this point, they'd not even bothered to ask the Dishons if Jessica was wearing a certain type of clothing. They just neglected to ask that question at all. They used this description to go and search Bucky Brooks's residence to see whether they could match any of the items clothing to the stuff that he'd been burning the night before. Obviously, as soon as they got there, the dog started to bark at the tin bin that he'd been burning all these clothes in. So they tipped it over, and all they retrieved out of it was these 2 pairs of black gloves. However, there was a scent of decomposing on there, and I don't know whether this is human decomposing smell or if it was an animal. I don't know if you can tell the difference between them two. Obviously, Mike and Edna had had a fucking enough, which I don't blame them, because by this point in the case, I'd had enough, because it was so frustrating that nothing was being done. Literally nothing was being done to even help the family, try and investigate what was actually happening to Jessica, or even where she could have possibly gone. So Mike took it into his own hands and he called the FBI. This is when the investigation started to really get into it and get some details down. They took the car away, they asked for all the evidence that the family had, the shoes and everything like that, because just remember, the police didn't take any of this away for anything, for testing, for fingerprints, nothing. The FBI went as far as they could. They had helicopters out, they had people knee deep in swamps, seeing whether there was any remains in there. They really, really did believe, that Jessica, these circumstances, she must have been taken. Finally, a search of the Brooks farm was finally completed. And what did they find in Brooks' barn? They literally found a picture of Jessica underneath like some rubble of hay and stuff. This was enough evidence to basically put Bucky Brooks in the line of fire for Jessica's disappearance. We're going to skip forward to the 27th of September 1999. This is 17 days since Jessica was last seen or went missing. A lady called Karen Hobbs was travelling back through Mount Washington when she decided to take a shortcut through the river bottoms to get back to Shepherdsville. Unfortunately, along this journey, she spotted something over in the corner of her eye and she thought it was a bit strange. So she stopped the car, she got out the car, and she walked over to find Jessica's lifeless body resting up against a tree. The FBI obviously were called to the scene after it was reported by Karen. The body was completely decomposed, completely unrecognisable. However, they did note that some of Jessica's limb was missing. She also had multiple number of her fingers cut clean off. Sheriff was notified of this and he made his way to Edna and Mike to let them know the news. Mike answers the door to see Paul standing there, and Paul just says, "We found Jessica." And Mike asks, "Is she alive?" And Paul just simply replies, "No, she's dead." At this point, Edna jumps up and she basically screams at Paul and says, "Now tell me she's a damn runaway." Mike told the documentary people that he was not able to go and view his daughter's body. Obviously, it's a very traumatic experience and he was not ready for this scene he was going to see, so unfortunately Edna had to be the one to go and identify her daughter. As soon as she saw the body, she instantly fell to her knees, unconsolable. However, she really could not recognise it was her daughter until she looked at her thigh. And on her thigh, she saw her butterfly tattoo. And she instantly knew then that it was Jessica's body. Jessica's cause of death was strangely none of the injuries that she had on her body. It was actually a result of strangulation. She also had a broken jaw, and she obviously had some of her fingers missing and cut off. But the most haunting thing was that from the post-mortem they discovered Jessica was actually alive for 3 days after she was reported missing initially. 3 whole days. That something possibly could have happened to help save Jessica. Obviously, after the discovering of Jessica's body, Bucky Brooks was the first person on their list to get in and question. However, when he was questioned, Bucky was caught telling several lies and inconsistencies in his story, which obviously got the FBI's attention. When he was first questioned about Jessica's disappearance, he said that he did see her the day that she went missing and she was walking along the road. However, when he was asked that question again, he told investigators that he hadn't seen her, he wasn't around because he was actually in bed having sex with his wife. However, when his wife was questioned about this, she said that they hadn't even had sex at all that day. So this was red flags. After this, Bucky was instantly asked to do a polygraph test or a lie detector test, whatever you want to call it. However, just so you guys know, polygraph tests cannot be used in court, and you're not even allowed to use the word polygraph because otherwise a case can be actually thrown out of court. What they use this for is they basically use it to direct them in their line of questioning. So if someone was to come back and they saw they were telling lies, they could say, well, you know, you did lie on this question. Have you got something else to tell us? Of course, the results came back and Bucky Brooks failed completely. A grand jury indictment is brought against Bucky Brooks after being charged with the murder of Jessica. I'm now going to be talking about the trial of Bucky Brooks. One very serious question that was asked was to Bucky Brooks saying, if we were to find your fingerprints on Jessica's body, what would you say to that? And Bucky replied, if you find my fingerprints, I'll have to admit it. Again, a very weird and strange statement to make. However, the whole investigation leading up to the trial and after the trial and during the trial, it was just all a big mess. And I feel so sorry for the Dishon family, and I feel so sorry for Jessica, who I feel was really let down by this, and even during her trial, it completely went tits up. During the trial, a police officer was asked about some evidence that was meant to be put into a frozen locker. However, none of this evidence was ever frozen, and it just went to show how negligent the team had actually been in even protecting or preserving any evidence to help Jessica's case. A known drug dealer in the area called James Coulter, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, was then brought on to the stand. Basically, he had a bad reputation, and the defence were trying to put this story across that basically James had something to do with Jessica's disappearance. However, because of what I'm now about to say, they never actually got to present that story in court. I questioned him about obviously if they'd seen Jessica, and he then basically let the court know that he was her drug dealer and that he had seen her. He saw her around 4 p.m. the day before because obviously he was her drug dealer. Detective Charlie Mann kind of threw the whole trial in the bin. He knew not to say this one word because the whole trial would get thrown out, which to me, again, suspicious. If you know not to say a certain word in court and then you're just going to say it anyway, is there a reason behind this? Is it because you know that you were negligent and you just don't want it to be on your hands? Detective Charlie Mann basically was getting asked loads of questions in court, and he got asked what was one reason, why they chose Bucky Brooks. And he said he failed the polygraph. I think that should do. And the whole case was thrown out and it was put as a mistrial. After this mistrial, unless there was any more evidence to come to court, they weren't going to try Bucky again. And from Mike's own words, he said literally the police done bugger all to gain any more evidence or information on Bucky. All of Jessica's belongings that were found in the car that police had actually returned back to Jessica's family, and they kept it in her room. They also made sure to keep her room exactly the way she had left it the day that she went missing, just in case anything in the future was going to come up. Unfortunately, obviously, during many of these cases, you do find that the strain of someone going missing and turning up murdered is very traumatic for the family, and it can also ruin a lot of relationships, marriages. And unfortunately, Mike and Edna did end up getting a divorce because of this, and they also still do not speak to each other to this day. So we're going to fast forward 13 years after Jessica's death. So this is in June 2012, and the case was reopened as a cold case file. Detective Lynn Hunt, who was reopening this, said that all the information in the boxes was a complete mess. There was no order, there was no file, it was just chucked in all these boxes really. So she really had to sift through every single bit to really put the case together again. After this, she went back to the Dishon home and she said that she was reopening the case for them and asked for anything that they might have on hand to them, which luckily they did. They had the shoe, the phone and the purse still tucked away in Jessica's wardrobe. During this investigation, obviously she went back on all the suspects, and obviously the main one that she looked again at was Bucky Brooks. However, when she really took a look into Bucky, she realised that he actually had a mental evaluation, and it said he had an IQ of 61, which means that legally Bucky should have never taken a lie detector test, because they don't actually understand the reasons behind the questions and they don't understand the consequences of getting them questions wrong. So whilst this investigation was going on and she was looking through all these messy notes, she got a call from another detective, and this call changed a lot of things. And it was a call by someone claiming that they had been in a prison cell with someone and they had admitted to killing Jessica Dishon. On September 30th, 2013, which is 14 years after Jessica's death, in Kentucky State Reformatory, Detective Hunt was told by an informant he was sharing a cell with a man, and this man had been charged with having sexual relations with a child, and so had the informant who is telling this story. This man he shared a cell with was, you probably guessed it, and if you haven't, I don't know how you haven't, it was Stanley Dishon, Jessica's uncle. If you recall, the one that was sick, the one that was randomly outside the Dishon's home when they heard Jessica scream for help. So I am going to read word by word what the informant said, so sorry if I'm looking down. The informant said, these are the exact words from the interview, by the way. The informant said he stated that he had Jessica for a couple of days and then he took her life. The reason he did mutilation to her, he was trying to make it look like some drug or cartel had done this to her. He also said that she was having a relationship with a boy her own age, someone she had found that she had liked. He kept calling that boy a bastard and I don't even want to say that word, a very racial word, a disgusting word, that word bitch, and calling her names as well. As you've probably guessed, this was absolutely shocking to the detective. They could not believe what they were hearing. The small details about the mutilation to her body and everything had not been released to anyone other than her parents and also the detectives. So for some random informant who had actually shared a cell with Stanley to know this was kind of like a bullseye. So the informant continued to say Stanley tortured her in a barn close to where the body was found, somewhere where they party, and that some of her personal belongings are hidden under a falling tree. So Detective Hunt took Bubby, who was Jessica's brother, obviously much older now, and they went along the river bottoms because obviously this is where Jessica's body was found. This is where they thought the falling tree would be found. Bubby and Detective Hunt are digging in absolute awful conditions in the pouring down rain, trying to locate where this fallen tree may have been around the time. Obviously it is 14 years later, so this tree could have been long gone. So they're digging up all this mud, and unfortunately they literally could not find anything. They decide to get back in the car and just drive home. And as they're driving home, Bubby looks out the window and he points at this barn and he says, "Oh, that's where we all used to go hang out. That's where we used to party." And Detective Hunt's like, "We need to go look at that barn." So they go to this barn and basically they're sieving through everything, and Detective Hunt sees this little bit of fabric poking out of some rubble and stuff. She pulls this out and it literally matches the same set of bed sheets that Jessica has on her bed, and she says, "Doesn't this look really like the bed sheet, like the stuff that goes over your mattress on your bed? Doesn't this really look like a match to what Jessica's got on her bed?" So from this he agrees. They get in the car and they rush back to the Dishon home. Obviously everything from the day that Jessica went missing is still exactly the same. The bed sheets have never been changed in 14 years. Everything is still there. As they pull back the duvet cover, they notice that the mattress cover is missing. So they put this against the one that they've just found in this barn, and it matches exactly the same pattern to the one on Jessica's duvet cover. We are now going to go into depth about the very tragic story of Jessica's life and a family secret that came out that destroyed not just Jessica's family but other family members within the Dishon family, then had to let go a lot of secrets about Stanley that they'd all been hiding for many, many years. We're going to go back to the day that Jessica was taken on the 10th of September 1999. It had emerged that Stanley was actually raping and sodomizing Jessica from a very young age. And not just Jessica, but also several other young girls within the family had also come forward after this, admitting that Stanley had in fact raped them from a very young age and had been too scared to tell anyone. The day that Jessica went missing, Stanley had actually found out that Jessica had a boyfriend. They were outside near the car, and obviously from this he flew into a rage because Jessica basically told him to leave her alone now because she had a boyfriend, and if he carried on abusing her, she was going to tell her boyfriend everything. From this, what we gather is that there was some sort of struggle or altercation outside due to the one shoe being left behind, and then Jessica ran into her bedroom trying to protect herself behind her door, but unfortunately Stanley broke through, hit Jessica in the mouth, breaking her jaw. That's how hard he hit Jessica. And from this, he wrapped her up in her duvet, well, the mattress protector, which was actually later found in the barn. After he'd knocked Jessica unconscious, he then drove her to the barn where the mattress cover was found, and he tortured her for 3 days. He tortured this girl for 3 days, and then he tried to cover up his own tracks and strangled her. and left her body right near where he told his brother to go looking for her body. We're now going to be talking about the trial of Stanley Dishon. So Stanley Dishon pled guilty to 4 counts of rape in addition to manslaughter for the death of Jessica Dishon. It actually infuriates me that this plea deal was even put out there. He tortured Jessica for 3 days. He had been raping her from a young age. He tortured her not just for them 3 days, but for her whole life. And he got manslaughter in addition to other counts of rape. He got 20 years. 20 years. However, it doesn't just end there for poor Jessica and her family. Whilst Detective Hunt was going through these files, she actually noticed a letter dated back to 2002. So basically 2 to 3 years after the case went cold, someone had written a letter to detectives and multiple other different authorities informing them that Stanley Dishon had admitted that he had tortured and killed his niece, Jessica. However, this letter was completely ignored. It wasn't even followed up. So guys, that is the end of that very tragic story. But I'm hoping that I've done it justice, and I'm hoping that whoever watches this will go research a little bit more about Jessica. I just really felt strongly about this, and I really wanted to give Jessica Dishon her spot to just show that she did not have the justice that I believe she should have had. I believe there was a lot more that could have been done. If you have any other cases that you would like me to talk about or research, or you believe need a bit more, light brought onto them, please feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'll leave my link right here.